I'm going to now move on to our second speaker, Ciara Garvan. And Ciara is the founder of workjuggle.com. Workjuggle connects highly skilled professionals with flexible remote and contract roles. And Workjuggle offers training in unconsciousness bias, leadership and management. So Ciara, you're very welcome.
Thanks for that, Linda. I hope everyone can hear me okay?
We can hear you perfectly, yes.
Great. Well, listen, I really enjoyed hearing Janet speaking, and it very much echoed a lot of what we have learned, and we have absolutely learned by trial and error. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what we did when we had to move a face-to-face training. We had to move it online. We had to do that really quickly, figure it all out from scratch. And I'm just going to share literally exactly what we did, how we did it, and any kind of tips and tricks I thought might be useful for people out there. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So a little bit about Work Juggle. We are, there we go. So the Work Juggle story. So I founded Work Juggle myself about 3 years ago now, and we're predominantly actually a recruitment company. So the way Work Juggle came about initially is that I was working like really long hours and I had small children and I didn't want to leave the workforce. I wanted to stay in the workforce, but I wanted a bit more flexibility in my role. So what we really do is we do that whole flexible working piece. People doing digital marketing 3 days a week, people doing contracts for accounting on 6-month periods, that kind of thing. And we've always done training. We've done training from the start. But I'd be really honest and say, look, recruitment is our core business. But when the pandemic hit, like the kind of recruitment, like people, unless you're in healthcare or pharmaceutical, like recruitment pretty much very much slowed down for lots of people, and we would be included in that. And just by complete chance, we had completed our first ever tender to run a training program. So we had won a tender for a program called Reboot. It is funded by Technology Ireland Software Skillnet, and it's all about getting women who have taken time out of the workforce back into the workforce by helping them refresh their technical skills. So these are people who would have had maybe a degree in computer science and maybe hadn't worked for 5 or 6 years. So what we were asked was, okay, so you had tendered to do this originally on a face-to-face basis. Can you now move this all online? And of course, the question is, when you have a small business, the answer is always like, oh yes, we can definitely do that. But then you have to figure out how that can be done. And I think the thing about Reboot that's really different is as well, it was not a straightforward, look, here's how you use Excel management. Here's how you create a spreadsheet. It was a lot more than that. So because people are coming back into the workforce after having that gap in terms of a peer support network, really what Reboot was an intensive program whereby you bring people together, they build up their network, and that they would then have this like jolt of confidence back into themselves as to re-entering the workforce. But a lot of that is engaging with everyone else. So how could we do this virtually? That was always going to be the challenge. It's not, can you learn how to do something very quickly? It's how do you recreate that virtual network? So at the very first day, what I had said was the success for us would be that in 10 years' time, some of the women on the course were still meeting each other for coffee, and that they were still in each other's lives and they were still supporting each other throughout their career leadership. But that is tricky to do, you know, that is definitely a challenge. So we had an intensive program for 24 women. It was a mix of professional development, technical skills, and they also had access to Pluralsight and coaching. So every woman on the course had access to 4 coaching sessions. Again, this had all previously done face-to-face. So the challenge was on. We really want to do it. We want to do it well, but of course, this is a funded program, and they were clear that while they were really supportive of us, if for whatever reason it didn't work, you know, they just wouldn't be able to go ahead. So we really had to pull this out of the bag. And thankfully we did. And yeah, I love this slide. So necessity is the mother of invention. So it really was, like we learned a lot, and some of it was like definitely the pandemic made things trickier just in terms of things being in lockdown. But look, this is what we learned. So I call this slide the challenge, but really this is the things that keep me up at night. So I definitely lost sleep over running this program. And why was I losing sleep? So it had never been done virtually before. We had done some virtual training, but really it was limited, and it was generally like an add-on. Like we would have done a face-to-face training in somebody's office, and then they said, oh, we have an office in Brussels, can you do a virtual for us into there? That kind of thing. Not a big 10-day full-scale program like this. And the technology, we, like 6 months ago, I had never heard of Zoom, was Zoom the right thing to use? Were there other tools that could be used? And then there was the whole piece around lack of engagement. I was really worried that people were going to be on their screens, they'd be there for like 6 hours a day, and that they were just going to zone out, that it would just be boring, it would be really passive, it wouldn't be interesting for them. And then what would happen then is, well, people would start to drop out. So like the nightmare scenario, so I had a couple of nightmare scenarios in mind. The first one was that everyone would log on the first day and the technology wouldn't work, right? It would be a disaster and it would all just dissipate. And the second one was that we'd start with 24 women and we'd end with like 20 women. And again, that would be a disaster, that people were on this fully funded course and they hadn't made it to the end of it. And it would all be on us that we hadn't delivered a sufficiently engaging, interesting training program. And then, of course, that piece I mentioned earlier, the peer network. How do you recreate that really powerful network that's really crucial in this instance? How do you do that virtually? So this is what we did. So, and it's interesting because Janet used the term earlier when she was speaking, it's all about the learner, and I suppose the learner was front and center for us. So when I thought about it, I thought, well, look, these women are going to be at home. Some of them have very small children. Their partners may well be at home as well, or they might not have children. They're at home. They're on their own. They may be, they're feeling the isolation that I think we all felt, but that these people are under pressure. This is people are worried about their health. They're worried financially. And they're under pressure. So what can we do to make this just really easy for them, right? Make it just that we're just not adding to that pressure and we're just helping them along in their engagement. So first off, we didn't assume anything. We issued a tech questionnaire, which was very much like, what do you have access to? What do you not have access to? What are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? And one of the important learnings that came out of that is people just didn't have printers. So that was good to know, and that was good to know early on, because we could then say, okay, there's not going to be the facility to say, and just go up here and print out this spreadsheet or print out this case study or anything like that. People just aren't going to have that facility. We also decided to have a seamless induction. So this is, I have a copy here. This is our induction pack. It is 18 pages. It is 18 pages. It is absolutely everything you would ever want to know about joining our program. It is the links. It is the email addresses. It's photos of everybody. It's what to expect. It's how to use Zoom. It's a detailed schedule outlining every time you have to be there. Like literally anything we could think of that was in any way useful went in there. And in the end, at the start, I thought, oh yeah, that'll be like 2 or 3 pages, just a couple of lines. It was 18 pages. The other thing we did was we had a tech rehearsal. And again, this was just to get away from that nightmare scenario of on day one, nobody being able to log on properly. So the tech rehearsal, it was a half-an-hour session, 2 days before the training started. And it was just to make sure everyone could literally log on to Zoom, that we could see them and that we could hear them. But it was interesting because again, it threw up other things. So for the trainers, they need to see everyone's name underneath Zoom, the way you can see my name now. And not everybody had that set up because not everybody was familiar with it. And also some people are working in very difficult scenarios. It was clear people were kind of working in spare rooms and cupboards. And like little things whereby they'd have a really big window behind them and you couldn't really see them. So what we did is after that initial tech rehearsal, Jane, who works with me, she rang up everybody. She showed them exactly how to set up their Zoom properly, made sure everything was working. And that meant on that first day, that first morning, everything went absolutely fine. And crucially for the trainers, they could see everybody's name so they could really start referring and engaging with people straight away. They're the individual calls and then the Zoom link. So I'll talk about this a little bit more because it sounds so simple, but actually it's a little bit tricky to set up. But we had the same Zoom link every day for everything, right? So there was no, oh, where's the link for this? Oh, I can't find it. Oh, everybody else is on it. I better WhatsApp somebody. None of that. Same Zoom link every day, never changed. The other thing we did was we had a WhatsApp group and it was admin only. And we had quite a bit of chat about that because personally, I definitely have too much WhatsApp in my life. I think most people do. And it was all about how can we communicate last minute changes to people in a really rapid way. And WhatsApp is great for that. But what we said was, well, we'll do it admin only. So that way nobody can kind of like clog it up with different messages or like funny memes and stuff like that. Like that just wasn't the place for it. But it was really useful because like we had people come in, guest speakers, lunch and learn, and you could say, okay, you know, the person from this company, they'll be on in 10 minutes, and everybody knew to finish up their lunch and come back on the call. So it was really useful. The other thing we did was we did this physical handbook. Again, that's it there. Again, I thought, oh yeah, that'll be about 20 pages. And it was 88 pages. And the one we've just done for our next session is actually 120 pages. And I suppose what we were trying to do there was, one, we had realized people didn't have printers, but two, to allow for people to learn in different ways. Like personally, I love writing things down, highlighting things, marking them in the book. I think that's really important. And by giving the women this really nice pack, they had something physical that they could hold on to. That was actually, it was a really nice high quality document. And I think much better than anything they could ever have printed out on their own. And then the last thing we did to make things easier was we invested in the tech for our trainers. So this sounds maybe silly, but I think it's important. So on a practical level, we upgraded, a couple of people had to upgrade their broadband, myself included, and I have to say the providers were brilliant, given that it was in the middle of lockdown. We had no issue getting upgraded. But what we also did was we invested in webcams to put on the top of people's screens, and we've invested in ring lights. So I don't know if your kids watch YouTubers or all those Instagram influencers or anything like that, but that's what they have. Now, I don't have one here today because I'm inside a Learnovate, but I have one at home, and it just gives you a lovely warm glow. And it means from the webcam, the person is looking at you direct head on. And I suppose it's all about, you know, the people are going to be at home for 6 hours looking at you. And it kind of behoves you to have everything set up and looking well for them, you know? So we invested in the tech there as well. Now, yeah, okay. And I want to talk a little bit about the technology we utilize. So in the end, we went with Zoom, and we had 5 hosts. So that's how we all had the same Zoom link. We also had a learning management system. I'm happy to talk about that more. We managed to find a free learning management system. It worked really well for us. And if people have questions about that, I'm happy to take them. We used Calendly, a free booking system for the coaches. And again, we had the WhatsApp admin. So how do people learn? That's what we wanted to know. So we decided that, again, just like Janet said earlier, you just can't move a face-to-face and start doing it virtually, you know? So what we had was, in the morning, we had these sprint sessions, these intensive, like 2-hour sessions where the theme for the day, be it like innovation, collaboration, virtual presentations, that was what we drilled into in that morning. And then we had movement breaks for people to get a cup of coffee, to walk around the house, whatever they needed to do. And then we had breakout pods. So the breakout pods were really important because, of course, it's intimidating. 24 people, you've never met them, all online. So the breakout pods were groups of 4, and we put quite a bit of thought into them. So the breakout pods, our lead trainer is a trained psychologist, and she had done psychometric assessments with everyone prior to them joining the course. So she was then able to use the psychometric assessments and put people into the breakout pods based on the results from that. So in that sense, we never had like 3 extroverts and an introvert in one pod. They were all nicely balanced, and we got really good feedback from that. And similarly on the tech side, when we moved into the tech training, we changed out the pods there as well. So what we did was we said, okay, let's put a software engineer, a tester, a business analyst, and a user into one pod, because that'll bring the best kind of learning for everybody. I mentioned the LMS, and we recorded all our sessions, and we put a recording of each session. So at the end of every day, we put up the PowerPoint presentation. We did that after the training. We put up the PowerPoint presentation, and then we put up a recording. If we had taken a recording, we put up a recording as well. And that again was to say, okay, well, let's not assume everybody, you know, people get sick, you know. So if somebody had missed a session, that they would then be able to go up to the LMS after, and they'd be able to see the session for themselves. Now, in actual fact, that didn't happen. We had 100% engagement the whole way through. Everyone was fabulous, but that was, again, beforehand, we just didn't know that that was going to be the case. And we did a survey monkey. So I'm afraid we did actually survey monkey them to death a little bit, because it was our first time, and we had one every day, but it gave us great data, and we were able to share it with our Technology Ireland software skill net. So I just wanted to mention a little bit about the behind the scenes support, because I think when you move something from face-to-face to virtual, it is very different, and it is administrative heavy. It really is. You need consent for everything. So we had consent for WhatsApp, consent for the coaching, consent for the sessions to be recorded. make sure everybody could log into the LMS system properly, make sure get those individual phone calls for everybody for Zoom. Like, there is no doubt it is very different from doing something face to face. And also, you just can't switch things around quickly the way you might in face-to-face training. So that admin piece, it is, it really needs to be considered. And then the other piece was the trainers. We decided, for particularly on the professional development side, we'd have 2 trainers all the time. So we had one person, a little bit like how Linda and I are working together now. So you've one person presenting and somebody else managing the chat, managing the poll, and putting people in breakout rooms. So you don't have that break and flow where people can disengage. And the technology, I mentioned that, the ring lighting and stuff like that. So what were lessons learned? Well, okay, Zoom fatigue, it is absolutely real. We were really lucky. People engaged. We got fantastic feedback. But I think that's because the breakout groups were so important to us. And the sprint sessions, they worked really well. The other thing is delivering a training online. It is quite different. And I spoke to a friend of mine who does a lot of this all over the world. And she said, what it's like being a radio DJ. You're feeling like totally full on, and it feels a bit much because you're in a room all by yourself, but in actual fact, you're the only person providing energy, and you need to bring that energy. Otherwise, people will just fade away and they'll stop engaging. So we had a 6-hour max session, which I think was the absolute max. And actually for our next program, we're kind of slicing and dicing that a little bit with maybe more evening sessions and afternoons off. The other thing is we want to give people more ownership the next time. And again, that's back to something Janet was saying as well, in terms of giving people that autonomy, so let people own the sessions, more optional sessions, so they can dip in and out of it. The other thing we're going to do is more screencasts. I think that'll work really well. And a big project. That's what we're doing this time around. We've actually extended the training. It's going to be 13 days. And we're going to have a project that people, at the end of it, and they'll work in their breakout pods. And at the end of it, people will be able to say, we did this innovative project, and it's really cool. And then hopefully they'll be able to present it to the companies who will be hiring these women down the line. Okay. The other thing was timings. Everybody wants to know exactly when they're having a coffee break, so we've kind of worked that into our next one, and that's fine. And I think the other learning is that this is so scalable now. What we have is a program that's completely scalable, that previously it would, you'd run it in Dublin, and then maybe 6 months later you might run it in Cork. This time around, we were able to run it in May. We're running our next session. It's starting tomorrow. And we could run them again very easily, but we can now be capturing all those women with tech skills who are in Donegal, who are in Mayo, who are in Galway, who previously might have been able to access a really good course like this. They can now access this course. I keep doing that. Okay, so what did the participants think? And I just wanted to share with you a little bit of their own words and views. And our participants were brilliant. That they really were great, and they gave so much to it. And this is what they had to say. And I'm just going to read out one of them, because this is the one that I really love. So I feel every day just gets better and better. And of course, that's because we were learning ourselves. We were learning iteratively, and we were working on the feedback once we got it every night. Another fantastic day, swinging from technical to core skills again. And I feel very lucky to have the chance to participate in this program. So this program is it's a funded project to help address the tech gap, and what I loved was it's evident how much work was put into the planning and design. Like, we've put a huge amount of work into the planning and design. The trainers were brilliant. They were absolutely excellent. And it was everything working together, that whole admin side, the trainers, the technology. And we were just incredibly lucky that, I shouldn't say lucky, but look, it all came together. We were really thrilled. We're delighted to be doing it again. And I think we've learned a huge amount. So I'm really happy to take any questions that people might have.
Great, thanks a million, Ciara. It's a very inspiring story of transformation there that you've been able to share with the audience today. And I really liked the idea around the pods. I thought that was brilliant. And I suppose the energy as well. I can tell from the audience watching today, your energy is definitely there. You're bringing people into the room. So thanks a million for sharing your story. I suppose I have a couple of questions from the audience as well. One is really around, I think you kind of covered this a little bit, but around the maximum number of people that you would or could have at an online class.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I suppose it depends what you're trying to do, because we were trying to do that whole peer support network. We couldn't have it too big. 24 felt right. The other thing is, you need to have even numbers. So because everybody's going into different groups and you're doing pair work and stuff like that, you need even numbers rather than odd. Sorry. And I think potentially we might have gone to 26, but not more than that. But then again, if you're training on like how to do Excel spreadsheets, then that's different. Maybe you could have 100 people on that, you know?
Yeah, it does. It's, I suppose, as you said, it's looking at really your audience and looking at the learner needs and how that works. And then another question from the audience is around what learning management system did you use?
Yes. So we used a free one. Okay.
Okay.
So we're a small business and free works for us, right? And actually the Calendly was, oh no, the Zoom, we paid for Zoom. And it's not, but like it's important. Like a learning management system is a big investment. And so far we've been able to use it for free, though I am expecting any minute now they're going to say we'd like, €1,000 or something. But right now we're using it for free. It's called Canvas Instructor. So it's not Canva, which is a design tool, it's Canvas Instructor. And it is a little bit, for what we're trying to do, is probably a little bit like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, like Cork CITs and big universities use it. And it wasn't hugely intuitive because what we were trying to do was so small in relation to its huge capability. But it really worked really well. We had no issues with it. I set everybody up last night for the people starting today, and we were able to have support calls with them, and we found it really, really good.
Great. There is lots and lots of questions, and we'll ask one final question before we go down to the end, and I will ask more. So I suppose, how long are the breakout sessions and pods? Susan has asked.
Oh, that's a good question. So the breakout session, so it depends. So again, it depends what they were doing. So if you had a very quick, I say it went anything from like 10 minutes to even like 40 minutes, depending on what they were doing. And then everybody would come back and present together. But they were really important because in that group of 4, people would really chat and get to know each other, where it's much harder on that group of 24. As it happened, people were full of chat. We had loads of engagement, but we didn't know that going in. And I think for this one, when they're doing their work, when they're doing that like Dragon's Den innovation pitch we're going to have them do this time, I imagine they will be in a breakout session for up to 2 hours together, and that'll be about managing that themselves because they have a responsibility to come back with a big project, something good on the other end.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Ciara. So we'll keep you there until the end. Don't go anywhere.